I'm so glad you found your way here, right now. As you settle into rest, your mind is doing what it has done every moment of your waking life. Being aware. Tonight, you'll discover consciousness not through abstract theories, but through moments you already know. Welcome to Sleepless Scientist Night. Wherever you are right now, perhaps reflecting on your day, or simply feeling the weight of your body softening into rest, allow yourself this gentle exploration. We'll journey through 101 sleep facts about consciousness in daily life. From the moment you wake up confused, to why songs get stuck in your head, to why falling asleep feels like falling at all. This thoughtful journey through your everyday mind builds bridges between curious souls. A gentle subscribe, like, or sharing your thoughts creates a pathway for more restless minds to discover this peaceful space. One sleepy soul at a time, your presence here means everything. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You can let thoughts about your day drift past without holding them. Sense that soothing heaviness enveloping you, like awareness slowly dimming its brightness, dissolving into the peaceful fog of approaching sleep. Safe and undisturbed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating in the space between today and tomorrow. Let your mind settle like still water. And now we begin. Every morning, something quiet and miraculous happens. From the darkness of dreamless sleep, consciousness slowly rebuilds itself. You don't simply wake up. Awareness returns in layers, assembling pieces of who you are, where you are, what day it is. The brain regions responsible for self-awareness, memory, and perception reactivate in sequence, each adding another brushstroke to the picture of your waking self. Scientists have measured this process using brain imaging, watching as different networks come online over several minutes. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and self-reflection, is often last to fully awaken. This is why those first moments of consciousness can feel hazy, incomplete, like a photograph slowly coming into focus. You are literally being reconstructed, thought by thought, memory by memory. Have you ever woken up not knowing where you are? For a few disorienting seconds, nothing seems familiar. This common experience reveals something profound about consciousness. Your sense of location isn't automatic. It must be rebuilt each time you wake. During sleep, the hippocampus, which maps your spatial environment, reduces its activity. Upon waking, it takes a moment to reconnect your sense of self with your sense of place. This brief confusion, called sleep inertia, typically lasts only seconds, but can extend to several minutes if you wake from deep, slow-wave sleep. Your brain is essentially asking, "Where am I?" and then answering its own question as memories of your bedroom, your home, your life click back into place. Dreams can feel vivid and meaningful in the moment, yet they fade within seconds of waking. This isn't a flaw in your memory, but a feature of how consciousness transitions between states. During REM sleep, the brain regions that encode long-term memories are less active. Dreams exist primarily in working memory, that temporary holding space that can only retain information briefly without rehearsal. When you wake, unless you immediately focus on the dream, it slips away like water through open fingers. Studies show that people who keep dream journals gradually improve their dream recall. suggesting that the act of paying attention to dreams upon waking creates a bridge between sleeping and waking memory systems. Sometimes your alarm clock appears in your dream. The sound becomes part of the story, perhaps a ringing telephone or a siren in the distance. This happens because consciousness doesn't switch off completely during sleep. The brain continues monitoring the environment for relevant signals, filtering most sounds out, but allowing some to slip through. When a sound is incorporated into a dream rather than waking you, it suggests your sleeping brain decided the sound wasn't urgent enough to warrant full arousal. This protective mechanism allowed our ancestors to rest while remaining alert to danger. Your dream-weaving brain simply made sense of the intrusion by folding it into the ongoing narrative. Some people can wake up at exactly the right time without an alarm. They decide to wake at 6:30, and their eyes open at 6:29. This ability seems almost magical, but it reflects the brain's sophisticated internal clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. A tiny region in the hypothalamus keeps time even during sleep. When you intend to wake at a certain hour, this intention appears to prime the brain to increase alertness hormones like cortisol just before the target time. Studies have confirmed that people who expect to wake early show hormonal changes beginning about an hour before the anticipated awakening. Your sleeping brain, it seems, is quietly counting down. The snooze button might be making you more tired. Each time you drift back to sleep and wake again, you restart the process of sleep inertia. Your brain begins another sleep cycle, only to be interrupted minutes later. This repeated fragmentation leaves you groggier than if you had simply gotten up with the first alarm. Research suggests that those extra 9 minutes of broken sleep provide none of the restorative benefits of continuous rest. The consciousness that emerges after multiple snooze cycles has been rebooted several times, never quite completing its startup sequence. A single clean awakening, though initially harder, leads to faster clearing of that foggy feeling. Morning light does more than illuminate your room. It resets your entire biological clock. Specialized cells in your eyes, called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, detect light and send signals directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This signal suppresses melatonin, the hormone that promotes sleepiness, and helps synchronize your internal rhythms with the external world. This is why exposure to bright light in the morning can help you feel alert, while keeping rooms dim in the evening supports natural sleepiness. Your consciousness is linked to celestial rhythms, rising and falling with the sun, even when electric lights have made darkness optional. Whether you're a morning person or a night owl isn't simply a choice. It's partly written in your genes. Variations in clock genes like PER3 influence your chronotype, your natural preference for waking and sleeping times. Morning types tend to have certain versions of these genes that make their internal clocks run slightly fast, while evening types have versions that run slower. This means the early riser who bounds out of bed at dawn isn't more disciplined than the night owl who struggles before noon. They simply have different biological timing. Consciousness naturally peaks and dips at different hours for different people, following genetic instructions laid down before birth. When you haven't slept enough, you might feel like a different person. Decisions seem harder. Emotions feel bigger. Patience runs thin. This isn't imagination. Sleep deprivation measurably impairs the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for executive function, emotional regulation, and rational thinking. Meanwhile, the amygdala, which processes emotions, becomes more reactive. the tired brain is quite literally less balanced. With the thoughtful regions underperforming and the emotional regions overreacting, one night of poor sleep can shift this balance noticeably. Chronic sleep deprivation compounds the effect. The consciousness that emerges from an unrested brain is simply not operating at full capacity. That first cup of coffee works by blocking a molecule called adenosine. Throughout your waking hours, adenosine gradually accumulates in the brain, binding to receptors that promote feelings of tiredness. Caffeine molecules have a similar shape to adenosine and occupy the same receptors without activating them. This blocks the sleepiness signal, allowing stimulating neurotransmitters like dopamine to work more freely. The effect isn't creating energy but removing the perception of fatigue. When the caffeine wears off, the accumulated adenosine floods its receptors, which is why a caffeine crash can feel so sudden. Your consciousness hasn't gained anything. It has simply been temporarily shielded from knowing how tired it is. Yawning is contagious, and scientists are still exploring exactly why. Seeing someone yawn, hearing a yawn, even reading about yawning can trigger the reflex. Some research suggests this social contagion may be linked to empathy and emotional processing, though findings vary across studies. What's clear is that contagious yawning appears connected to social and emotional awareness in ways researchers continue to investigate. Children develop contagious yawning around age 4, roughly when they begin understanding that other people have minds different from their own. When one consciousness yawns, nearby consciousnesses often echo the signal, binding the group into shared rhythm. Some dreams you remember with perfect clarity. Others vanish completely. The difference often depends on when you wake. Dreams that occur closer to morning, during longer REM periods, are more likely to be recalled because you're more likely to wake directly from them. Emotional intensity also matters. Dreams with strong feelings activate the amygdala more strongly, which enhances memory encoding. The content itself plays a role too. Bizarre or unusual dreams are easier to distinguish from waking memories, and thus easier to recognize as dreams when you search your memory. Your remembered dreams represent only a fraction of your nightly journeys through consciousness. Recurring dreams often carry emotional themes rather than exact repetitions. You might dream repeatedly about being unprepared for an exam, missing a flight, or being chased, even if the specific details change. These patterns likely reflect unresolved concerns or ongoing emotional processing. The dreaming brain seems to return to certain templates when processing stress, anxiety, or unfinished psychological business. Some researchers view recurring dreams as attempts to master difficult emotions through repeated simulation. Others see them as signs that certain feelings haven't been adequately processed during waking hours. Either way, consciousness seems to have themes it revisits again and again. Lucid dreaming occurs when you become aware that you're dreaming while still within the dream. This unusual state blends elements of waking and sleeping consciousness. Brain imaging of lucid dreamers shows increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the region associated with self-awareness and thoughtful reflection. During ordinary dreams, this area is relatively quiet, which is why we accept impossible events without question. In lucid dreams, enough prefrontal activity comes online to recognize the dream state, sometimes allowing the dreamer to influence the dream's direction. Anyone can learn to lucid dream with practice, though it requires training the sleeping brain to question reality. Waking up gradually feels better than waking to a sudden alarm. This isn't just preference, but biology. A gentle awakening allows consciousness to transition smoothly through the stages of arousal, with hormones and neurotransmitters adjusting gradually. An abrupt alarm triggers the stress response, flooding the body with cortisol and adrenaline, which is useful for emergencies but jarring for routine mornings. Studies show that people woken by gradual light or soft sounds report better mood and cognitive performance than those woken by loud alarms. Consciousness, like the body, prefers gentle transitions over sudden shocks. You can drive home without remembering the route. The car arrives safely in the driveway, but you have no memory of the turns. The traffic lights, the familiar landmarks. This phenomenon, sometimes called highway hypnosis, reveals that consciousness isn't required for many complex behaviors. Once a skill is thoroughly learned, it can be handled by the basal ganglia, brain structures that manage automatic routines. This frees consciousness to think about other things, like the conversation you had at work or what to cook for dinner. You weren't unconscious during the drive. You were simply conscious of something other than driving. Did you lock the door? This nagging doubt plagues almost everyone, because automatic actions often bypass conscious memory encoding. When you lock the door out of habit, the action doesn't generate a distinct memory because it's not novel or attention-grabbing. Your brain efficiently handled the task without bothering to inform your conscious mind that it was done. Some people develop rituals to counteract this, like saying out loud that the door is locked or deliberately varying their routine to force attention. The uncertainty isn't a memory problem, but a feature of how consciousness delegates routine tasks. Morning routines can feel almost meditative. The same sequence of actions: shower, dress, coffee, breakfast, repeated day after day, becomes automatic, requiring little conscious oversight. This predictability reduces cognitive load, conserving mental energy for decisions that actually matter. Research shows that people who follow consistent morning routines report lower stress and better mood. The familiar rhythm tells the brain that everything is normal. Nothing requires vigilance. Consciousness can relax into the routine like a well-worn path, saving its resources for the unexpected challenges ahead. Good ideas often arrive in the shower. The warm water, the lack of screens, the automatic nature of washing create conditions where the mind can wander freely. Neuroscientists call this the incubation effect. When you stop actively working on a problem, the default mode network takes over, making loose associations and connections that focused attention might miss. The shower also produces alpha brainwaves associated with relaxed alertness, which are linked to creative insight. Many people report their best thinking happens during showers, walks, or other mindless activities. Consciousness solves problems by sometimes not trying to solve them. Some people need silence in the morning. Conversation, news, music, any additional input feels overwhelming before the brain has fully come online. This isn't antisocial behavior, but reflects differences in sensory processing and cognitive bandwidth. Introverts, in particular, may need quiet time to reach their baseline functioning level. Morning cortisol levels, sleep quality, and individual arousal thresholds all influence how much stimulation feels comfortable upon waking. The consciousness that has just rebooted may simply not have enough resources to process the world and interact with others simultaneously. The smell of coffee can make you feel more alert before you drink it. This anticipatory response is a conditioned association, built through thousands of mornings where that aroma preceded the caffeine effect. The brain learns to release dopamine, a neurotransmitter involved in alertness and reward, in anticipation of expected pleasures. This is why rituals matter. The familiar cues of your morning routine, the sound of the coffee maker, the particular mug you use, become signals that prime consciousness for wakefulness. You're not just drinking coffee, you're performing a ceremony that tells your brain it's time to be alert. Forgetting to bring something when you leave the house is incredibly common. This happens because prospective memory, remembering to do something in the future, is surprisingly fragile. Unlike retrospective memory, which records what has happened, prospective memory requires holding an intention across time until the right moment arrives. The intention to grab your umbrella competes with all the other things occupying working memory as you prepare to leave. One strategy that helps is placing the item you need to remember directly in your path, externalizing the memory so you literally cannot miss it. Looking at a long to-do list can feel stressful even before you start working. This is partly explained by the Zeigarnik effect, named after psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, who found that uncompleted tasks occupy working memory more than completed ones. Your brain keeps incomplete items active, essentially reminding you not to forget them. This has survival value, ensuring tasks get done. But in a world of endless to-do lists, it can create chronic background stress. Writing tasks down and making concrete plans for when and how you'll do them can reduce this cognitive burden, signaling to your brain that the task is safely stored and doesn't need constant rehearsal. You can read an entire page and realize you have no idea what it said. Your eyes moved over every word, but your mind was somewhere else entirely. This dissociation between perception and attention demonstrates that consciousness is not the same as sensory processing. Information can enter your eyes without entering your awareness. Mind wandering during reading is extremely common, especially when the material is boring or difficult. Some studies suggest we spend nearly half our waking hours thinking about something other than what we're currently doing. Consciousness, it seems, has a restless quality, always tempted to drift. Some mornings you feel sharp and clear. Others, everything feels foggy and slow. This variation reflects multiple factors converging. Sleep quality the night before, where you are in your circadian rhythm, hydration, stress levels, even the weather. Consciousness isn't a constant but a fluctuating state, rising and falling in quality throughout the day and across days. Research shows that most people have a cognitive peak in late morning, a dip after lunch, and a secondary peak in early evening. Though individual patterns vary, the conscious you experiencing this moment is not identical to the conscious you an hour ago or an hour from now. Let's pause here and notice your body. All those morning routines you've done thousands of times. Brushing teeth, making coffee, walking familiar paths. Your brain learned them so well that consciousness could rest. Even now, your heart beats without instruction. Your lungs breathe without reminder. Trillions of cells work in silence, asking nothing from you. This body has carried you through every morning of your life. And tonight, it carries you towards sleep. Feel its weight settling. Feel its quiet wisdom. Trust this body that knows how to take care of itself. Now we continue. There's a clock ticking in your room right now, or perhaps traffic outside, or the hum of appliances. Until this moment, You probably weren't hearing any of it. This is habituation, the brain's way of filtering out unchanging, irrelevant stimuli. Consciousness doesn't need to know about every sound, only the ones that matter. New sounds grab attention. Familiar ones fade into the background. This explains why you notice a sound when it stops. The sudden silence alerts you to a change. Your brain was monitoring the sound all along, just not reporting it to consciousness unless something changed. At a loud party, you can somehow hear your name spoken across the room. This cocktail party effect demonstrates the brain's remarkable ability to filter relevant information from noise. Multiple conversations occur simultaneously, each one a complex stream of sound. Yet your attention can selectively tune in to just one while monitoring others in the background for signals like your name. This selective attention involves both focusing on what matters and suppressing what doesn't. Your consciousness experiences a clear signal, but behind the scenes, massive filtering has already occurred. Time flies when you're having fun. Hours can pass like minutes when you're deeply engaged in something enjoyable. This subjective time distortion happens partly because enjoyable activities produce flow states, where self-monitoring decreases and attention becomes fully absorbed. With less self-reflection, fewer memory markers are laid down, making the period seem shorter in retrospect. Boredom has the opposite effect. Time drags because you're constantly checking how much has passed, creating many memory markers that make the period seem longer. Consciousness doesn't have a reliable internal clock. It constructs the feeling of time from attention and memory. In moments of heightened awareness, time can seem to slow noticeably. People in car accidents often report seeing events unfold in slow motion. For decades, scientists thought the brain actually sped up its processing during emergencies, but careful experiments suggest otherwise. Time doesn't actually slow down. Instead, the brain encodes more detailed memories during intense experiences, thanks to the amygdala's enhancement of memory formation. When you recall the event, the richness of detail creates the impression of extended duration. Consciousness didn't experience more time. It remembered more within the same time. In a famous experiment, viewers watching a video of people passing a basketball were asked to count the passes. About half of them didn't notice a person in a gorilla suit walking through the scene. This inattentional blindness reveals the severe limits of conscious attention. When focus is directed intently at one task, even obvious events can go unnoticed. We tend to believe we would notice a gorilla, which is precisely why the finding is so striking. Consciousness creates a convincing illusion of complete awareness, while actually sampling only a tiny portion of available information. You've searched frantically for your keys, only to find them right in front of you. This failure to see what's plainly visible is called attentional set, where expectations override perception. If you're looking for keys on the counter and they're hanging on a hook, your search template doesn't match, and you somehow don't see them. Consciousness is guided by expectation, and sometimes expectation blinds us. The keys were in your visual field the entire time. They just weren't in your mental search image. Looking and seeing are not the same thing. Perceptual load refers to how much mental processing capacity is being used. When load is high, when you're concentrating hard on something demanding, your ability to notice other things decreases substantially. Radiologists searching for tumors can miss other obvious abnormalities on the same scan. Drivers using cell phones can look directly at pedestrians without seeing them. Consciousness has bandwidth limits, and when that bandwidth is occupied, visual processing continues, but awareness does not. You can easily read sentences with jumbled or missing letters. A oxidiani, tu riich. The Huam, mined, Dios, not raid, Erve el Theater by Islef. This happens because reading relies heavily on top-down processing. Your brain predicts what words should appear based on context and recognizes them holistically rather than letter by letter. The same mechanism allows you to miss typos in your own writing. Your brain knows what you intended to write and sees that instead of what's actually there. Consciousness perceives its predictions as much as it perceives raw sensory data. The same room can feel completely different depending on your mood. When you're happy, the world seems brighter, more welcoming. When you're sad or anxious, the same environment can feel unwelcoming or draining. This mood-congruent perception demonstrates that consciousness doesn't just record reality, it colors it with emotion. Brain imaging shows that emotional states actually change how sensory information is processed. The world you perceive is always a collaboration between what's out there and how you're feeling in here. Office noise bothers you more than cafe noise, even at similar volumes. The difference is perceived control and expectation. In a cafe, ambient chatter is expected and accepted. You chose to be there. In an office, you might feel trapped, unable to escape the distraction. The acoustic properties matter too. Human speech at comprehensible volume is particularly distracting because your brain automatically tries to process language. But much of the annoyance comes from psychological factors: unpredictability, lack of control, and violation of expected quiet. Consciousness evaluates sounds by context, not just decibels. Walking helps you think. The rhythm of footsteps, the gentle movement, the changing scenery all seem to facilitate mental clarity. Research confirms that walking improves creative thinking, with one Stanford study showing a 60% increase in creative output during walks compared to sitting. Several mechanisms contribute: increased blood flow to the brain, the mildly positive mood induced by movement, reduced rumination due to external focus, and perhaps the bilateral nature of walking itself, alternating left and right, which may integrate brain hemispheres. Consciousness moves more fluidly when the body is in motion. Faces are special to human consciousness. You can recognize thousands of individuals by face alone, often after seeing them just once. A specialized brain region called the fusiform face area processes facial information with remarkable speed and accuracy. This specialization begins in infancy. Newborns prefer looking at face like patterns over other shapes. Damage to the fusiform area causes prosopagnosia, the inability to recognize faces, even of close family members. Consciousness has devoted significant neural real estate to the social task of knowing who's who. The word is right on the tip of your tongue. You know it. You can almost feel its shape, but it won't come. This frustrating experience involves partial retrieval. You've accessed enough information to know the word exists in your memory. Perhaps its first letter or number of syllables, but not enough to fully retrieve it. The memory is there. The path to it is temporarily blocked. Often the word pops up later, when you've stopped trying, suggesting that unconscious search processes continue even after conscious effort ceases. You often remember where you learned something, even if you can't remember exactly what it said. This spatial context is automatically encoded along with content. Reading something in a physical book creates different memory traces than reading it on a screen. You might remember that a fact was on the upper left page, near a certain illustration. This context-dependent memory reflects how the brain organizes information by weaving content into the circumstances of encoding. Consciousness experiences information as embedded in space and time, not floating freely. Multitasking is largely a myth. What feels like doing two things at once is usually rapid task switching. And each switch has a cost. The brain needs time to disengage from one task, load the rules for another, and get back up to speed. These switching costs add up, making multitaskers less efficient than those who focus on one thing at a time. Studies show that heavy multitaskers are actually worse at filtering irrelevant information, not better. Consciousness can only truly attend to one demanding task at a time. The rest is illusion. You're still here with me, drifting through the science of your everyday moments. Just notice how familiar these experiences feel. We've all searched for keys right in front of us. We've all heard our name across a crowded room. We've all lost time when having fun. These little mysteries connect us, one sleepy soul at a time. Let's continue. Your mind wanders nearly half the time. Studies using experience sampling, where people are randomly prompted throughout the day to report what they're thinking, find that attention is often elsewhere, not on the current activity. Harvard researchers found that minds wander about 47% of waking hours. This wandering isn't a failure of attention, but the brain's default mode. When external demands are low, consciousness naturally turns inward, reviewing the past, simulating the future, processing relationships. The default mode network, a collection of brain regions, becomes active during this internal focus. Mind wandering may serve functions like planning, problem solving, and maintaining a sense of continuous self across time. Songs get stuck in your head, playing on repeat for hours. These earworms, as researchers call them, typically involve simple, repetitive melodies with a catchy hook. One theory suggests the brain loops music when a song is incomplete, either because you only know part of it or because it was interrupted. The mind may be trying to achieve closure. Another theory involves memory triggers. Hearing part of a song activates the whole melody, which then cycles in working memory. Most people find earworms mildly annoying but not distressing. They're a reminder that consciousness isn't entirely under voluntary control. Your best ideas often arrive when you're not trying to have them. The shower, the commute, the moment before sleep. These low-attention states seem fertile ground for insight. This incubation effect occurs when conscious effort pauses, but unconscious processing continues. The relaxed state allows broader associations, connecting distant ideas that focused attention might keep separate. Research shows that taking breaks improves problem solving, especially for problems requiring creative leaps. Consciousness sometimes solves problems precisely by stepping aside. Talking to yourself isn't strange. It's practically universal. Inner speech, the silent voice in your head, helps organize thoughts, maintain focus, and regulate emotions. When tasks are difficult, people often move to audible self-talk, muttering instructions to themselves. This isn't a sign of losing your mind, but of using language to assist cognition. Children can be observed doing this openly before they learn to internalize it. Consciousness uses language as a tool, speaking to itself to think more clearly. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened yet, playing out scenarios in your mind, anticipating what someone might say, and planning your response is a form of social simulation. The brain contains regions specialized for modeling other minds, and these activate during imaginary conversations, just as they would during real ones. This mental rehearsal likely helps prepare for social situations, reducing uncertainty and building confidence. It can also spiral into rumination when the imagined conversations are negative. Consciousness is always preparing for encounters with other consciousnesses. Worries multiply at night. The quiet, the darkness, the lack of distraction allow anxious thoughts to amplify. During the day, external demands occupy attention, leaving less room for worry. At night, with nothing else to focus on, the mind turns inward, and the amygdala's awareness of potential concerns has fewer competing signals. Fatigue plays a role too. The prefrontal cortex's regulatory capacity is depleted by day's end, leaving emotions less controlled. The conscious mind at night is the same mind as during the day, just operating with fewer distractions and fewer resources for emotional regulation. Writing helps you think. Putting thoughts on paper or screen isn't just recording what you already know. It extends cognition beyond the brain. The act of writing forces vague ideas into concrete form, revealing gaps and inconsistencies. It reduces working memory load by externalizing information, freeing up mental resources for new processing. Many writers report not knowing what they think until they write it. Consciousness is not confined to the skull. It extends through tools that amplify and clarify thinking. When you read a text message from someone you know well, you might hear their voice in your head. This auditory imagery is generated internally, using the same brain regions involved in processing actual speech. The vividness varies between individuals. Some people have rich inner voices while others barely experience them. This ability to simulate others' voices is part of how we maintain social connections even at a distance. Consciousness contains echoes of the people we know, playing their parts in the theater of the mind. Sometimes you don't know what you're thinking. Consciousness has limited access to its own processes. Many thoughts and decisions occur below the threshold of awareness, surfacing only as feelings, intuitions, or sudden realizations. You might not know why you feel uneasy about a decision, only that something seems off. This metacognitive gap means that the story you tell yourself about your mental life is always incomplete. There's more happening inside than consciousness can witness. Sleeping on a problem really helps. Studies show that sleep improves insight and creative problem solving, not just by providing rest, but through active processing during sleep. Memory consolidation during sleep involves replaying and reorganizing information, sometimes forging new connections between ideas. People asked to solve puzzles do better after a night's sleep than after an equivalent period of waking. The brain continues working while consciousness is absent, and sometimes produces answers that waking effort couldn't find. And now notice, even as you listen, thoughts arise and pass like clouds. You don't create them. They simply appear. The mind that wanders during boring meetings is the same mind that produces insights in the shower. Always active, always exploring. During this day that has passed, consciousness was doing exactly what it needed to do. Filtering, focusing, wandering. And right now, you can simply watch it slow down. Thoughts becoming fewer, simpler, softer, like ripples settling on still water. Now we continue. You can sometimes feel when someone is watching you. This isn't supernatural. It's subtle perception. Your peripheral vision, which is more sensitive to motion than your central vision, may detect someone's gaze direction without you consciously noticing. Change in ambient noise, shadows, or even subtle cues might contribute. Of course, confirmation bias plays a role too. You remember the times you felt watched and were right, forgetting the times you were wrong. Still, humans are remarkably tuned to social attention. Consciousness monitors the social environment even when we're not aware of it. Real smiles look different from posed ones. A genuine smile, called a Duchenne smile, involves not just the mouth, but the muscles around the eyes, creating those characteristic crinkles at the corners. The zygomatic major muscle pulls up the corners of the mouth, while the orbicularis oculi creates the eye involvement. While most people find it difficult to voluntarily produce this eye engagement, humans are remarkably skilled at detecting the difference between genuine and posed smiles, even in fractions of a second. Consciousness has evolved sophisticated tools for reading the emotions of other consciousnesses. Sometimes you know what someone is going to say before they say it. This isn't mind reading, but prediction based on pattern recognition. You know this person's speech patterns, their typical concerns, the context of the conversation. Your brain generates expectations about likely next words and can even complete sentences internally before they're spoken. When predictions are confirmed, conversation feels smooth. When they're violated by an unexpected word or surprising opinion, you experience a small jolt of surprise. Consciousness predicts other minds constantly, usually without effort or awareness. Talking to a good friend can actually regulate your physiology. Heart rate synchronizes during close conversation. Stress hormones decrease. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, increases. This co-regulation suggests that consciousness isn't fully individual. We are designed to stabilize each other. Loneliness is harmful partly because it removes this external regulation, leaving each person to manage stress alone. The social brain expects connection. When it's missing, both mental and physical health suffer. During conversation, people unconsciously mirror each other's postures, gestures, and expressions. This mimicry happens automatically and serves to build rapport. When someone mirrors your movements, you tend to like them more, even if you don't consciously notice the mirroring. This synchronization extends to speech patterns. People adjust their word choice, accent, and speaking rate to match conversation partners. Consciousness seeks resonance with other consciousnesses, aligning bodies and behaviors in a subtle dance of connection. Silences in conversation begin to feel awkward after about 4 seconds. Research across cultures, particularly among English speakers, shows that comfortable conversational pauses rarely exceed this threshold. When silence stretches longer, people feel anxious, sensing something may have gone wrong. However, this tolerance varies across cultures. In Japan, comfortable silence can extend beyond 8 seconds. The intolerance for silence reflects the tight temporal coordination of normal conversation. Turn-taking typically happens within 200 milliseconds, faster than conscious planning allows, suggesting much of conversational timing is automatic. Consciousness experiences a break in this rhythm as something to be resolved. You remember social information better than abstract facts. Gossip, drama, and personal stories stick in memory more easily than statistics or concepts. This bias likely reflects evolution. Knowing who did what to whom, who's trustworthy, who might cause problems, was helpful for survival in social groups. The brain has dedicated resources for processing social information, and consciousness privileges it. This is why stories are more memorable than lectures, and why examples with people are easier to understand than abstract principles. Text messages are often misunderstood. Without tone of voice, facial expression, and body language, meaning becomes ambiguous. The brain defaults to interpreting uncertain information cautiously, so neutral messages can seem curt or distant. Emojis help, but don't fully replace nonverbal cues. The consciousness that evolved for face-to-face communication adapts imperfectly to text-based interaction, filling gaps with assumptions that are often wrong. Many conflicts begin with misread messages. Social interaction is tiring, especially for introverts. Managing a conversation requires monitoring the other person's emotional state, tracking the topic, planning responses, filtering inappropriate remarks, and coordinating all this in real time. This cognitive load depletes mental resources. Introverts, who may process social information more deeply, find this especially draining. After extended socializing, consciousness needs recovery time, a period of reduced stimulation to restore depleted resources. You're better at recognizing faces than names. Names are arbitrary labels, having no inherent connection to the person they designate. Faces are rich in information, features, expressions, age, emotion. The brain processes these very differently. Face recognition involves holistic processing, seeing the face as a single gestalt rather than assembling it from parts. Name recall involves searching through semantic memory for a specific verbal label. These systems can fail independently. You might recognize someone perfectly well but be completely unable to retrieve their name. Emotions are contagious. Spending time with anxious people can make you anxious. Being around calm people can calm you down. This emotional contagion happens automatically through processes like facial mimicry and physiological synchronization. Mirror neuron systems may play a role, though the exact mechanisms are debated. What's clear is that consciousness is permeable to the emotions of nearby consciousnesses. We absorb each other's feelings without trying, and sometimes without knowing. Sometimes you say things you didn't mean to say. Speech errors, or slips of the tongue, reveal that speaking involves multiple processes happening in parallel. You might blend two words, swap sounds between words, or say the opposite of what you intended. Freud believed these slips revealed unconscious desires, but modern research suggests they're usually just mechanical errors in speech production. Still, they demonstrate that consciousness doesn't have complete control over what comes out of your mouth. The speaking system sometimes glitches. Strangers sometimes look familiar. You might see someone in a crowd and feel certain you know them, only to realize you don't. This happens because facial recognition works by pattern matching against stored templates. A stranger whose features resemble someone you know activates similar patterns, creating a feeling of familiarity. This system is designed to err on the side of recognition. It's safer to mistakenly think you know someone than to fail to recognize an actual acquaintance. Consciousness generates false familiarity to avoid missing real connections. being ignored can feel uncomfortable. Social exclusion activates some of the same brain regions as physical discomfort. Even mild exclusion, like being left out of a ball-tossing game, produces measurable distress. This neural overlap suggests that social connection is as fundamental to human well-being as physical safety. Consciousness evolved in social groups, where exclusion could affect survival. The sting of being ignored is an ancient signal, noting that your place in the group may be at risk. Loneliness changes how you perceive the world. Lonely individuals tend to interpret social situations more cautiously, expect difficulty more readily, and remember social information more selectively. These perceptual biases create a challenging cycle. Expecting difficulty leads to defensive behavior, which leads to actual disconnection, which confirms the expectation. Consciousness is shaped by social experience, and extended loneliness affects the lens through which we see others. Connection isn't just pleasant, it's helpful for accurate perception. The blue light from screens suppresses melatonin, the hormone that promotes sleepiness. Specialized cells in the eye are particularly sensitive to blue wavelengths, signaling to the brain that it's daytime. Exposure to screens in the evening can delay the natural rise of melatonin by several hours, making it harder to fall asleep. This is a mismatch between ancient biology and modern technology. The brain interprets screen light as sunlight, not knowing that the sun has actually set. Many people find that reducing screen time before bed improves sleep quality. Embarrassing memories have a way of returning uninvited. Lying in bed, you might suddenly recall something awkward you said years ago, feeling the discomfort as if it happened yesterday. This isn't random. The brain prioritizes self-relevant information for memory and retrieval. Mistakes that could affect your social standing are flagged for special attention, perhaps to help you avoid repeating them. Consciousness returns to these moments because the social brain considers them noteworthy, even when you'd rather forget. Some people need the television or a podcast to fall asleep. The background sound provides an attention anchor, something for consciousness to lightly hold on to while the rest of the mind drifts. Without it, thoughts may wander to worries, or the silence itself becomes uncomfortable. The content matters less than the rhythm. A familiar voice, a predictable pattern. This habit creates a conditioned association, where the sound becomes a sleep cue, signaling to the brain that it's time to relax. Reading a physical book often induces drowsiness faster than reading on a screen. Several factors contribute. The absence of blue light, the lower engagement of holding pages versus scrolling, the physical posture of reading in bed. Books also tend to involve more passive absorption than the interactive clicking and scrolling of digital media. The gentle activity of reading, requiring enough attention to prevent mind wandering, but not enough to stimulate, creates ideal conditions for consciousness to wind down. Late-night hunger is real, even if you ate a full dinner. Circadian rhythms influence appetite, and for many people, there's a natural uptick in hunger in the late evening. Stress and fatigue can also trigger eating, as food provides a quick source of comfort and energy. Sleep deprivation itself increases hunger hormones, creating a feedback loop where tiredness leads to eating, leads to less restful sleep. Consciousness of body signals, including hunger, varies throughout the day and can sometimes mislead you about actual nutritional needs. You replay conversations in your head, thinking of what you should have said. This counterfactual thinking is a form of mental simulation. exploring alternative versions of events. It can serve learning, helping you prepare for similar situations in the future. But it can also fuel regret and rumination, keeping you awake with unproductive rehashing. The line between helpful reflection and unhelpful rumination is often unclear in the moment. Consciousness seems drawn to unfinished business, returning again and again to moments that didn't go as hoped. Stretching before bed feels good and can aid sleep. The gentle tension and release of stretching activates the parasympathetic nervous system, promoting relaxation. It also brings awareness to the body, shifting attention from mental activity to physical sensation. This body scan effect can interrupt rumination, giving consciousness something neutral to focus on. Many relaxation techniques, from yoga to progressive muscle relaxation, use this principle, engaging the body to calm the mind. Certain sounds reliably promote relaxation. Rain, ocean waves, wind through leaves. These nature sounds share acoustic properties that the brain finds soothing. They're complex, but predictable, lacking the sudden changes that trigger alertness. From an evolutionary perspective, these sounds signaled safe environments, places where one could rest without worry. Pink noise, which has more low-frequency components than white noise, seems especially effective for deepening sleep. Consciousness responds to soundscapes, and the right sounds can ease the transition from waking to sleeping. Cool rooms help you sleep. Core body temperature naturally drops at night, part of the circadian rhythm that prepares the body for sleep. A warm environment interferes with this cooling, making it harder to fall asleep and reducing sleep quality. The optimal bedroom temperature for most people is around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, or 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. Consciousness registers body temperature even during sleep, and uncomfortable warmth can fragment rest without fully waking you. Bedtime routines work because they create a chain of conditioned cues. The same sequence of actions: brushing teeth, dimming lights, getting into bed, becomes associated with sleep through repetition. Each step signals to the brain that sleep is approaching, triggering physiological changes that prepare for rest. This is why sleep experts recommend consistent routines. The reliability of the sequence strengthens the conditioning. Consciousness can be trained, and the evening routine is a form of gentle training. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Your day is complete. Every conversation, every thought, every moment of awareness is settling now like dust after a gentle wind. The brain that was so active, filtering reality, wandering in daydreams, connecting with others, is ready to rest. Think of all the days that have ended exactly like this. The rhythm of waking and sleeping, rising and falling, has carried you through your entire life. Like breathing, like heartbeats, consciousness cycles too. Let everything from today drift away. We're almost there now. Just as you're falling asleep, your body jerks suddenly awake. This hypnic jerk is extremely common and usually harmless. One theory suggests it's an evolutionary leftover. As muscles relax, the brain may misinterpret this as falling and triggers a protective reflex. Another theory points to the brain's transition between waking and sleeping states, which can sometimes misfire. The experience can feel unexpected, even puzzling, but it's just consciousness briefly getting confused about the body's state as it crosses the threshold into sleep. With eyes closed, Strange images appear, faces you don't recognize, geometric patterns, fleeting scenes that make no sense. These hypnagogic images emerge as consciousness begins to loosen from waking reality. The visual cortex, no longer receiving external input, generates its own imagery. These pre-sleep visions are distinct from true dreams, briefer and more fragmented, but they mark the beginning of the journey inward. Some people hear their name called just as they're drifting off. This hypnagogic hallucination is surprisingly common and can feel very real. The auditory system, like the visual system, can generate internal experiences when external input fades. The sound of your name, deeply encoded through a lifetime of hearing it, may surface spontaneously as the brain transitions into sleep. It's not a ghost or a premonition, just consciousness playing with familiar patterns. Time behaves strangely while waiting to fall asleep. Minutes can feel like hours when you're lying awake, wanting sleep to come, without external events to mark its passage. Subjective time distorts. Checking the clock makes it worse, creating anxiety that further delays sleep. Consciousness without engagement stretches time uncomfortably. This is why experts recommend not watching the clock if you can't sleep. You cannot try to fall asleep. Effort defeats the purpose. Sleep requires releasing the very attention and control that trying involves. This paradox frustrates many insomnia sufferers, who try harder and harder to sleep while their trying keeps them awake. The solution isn't more effort but less, a letting go of the need to sleep. Consciousness must surrender itself, which is the one thing consciousness resists doing. Counting sheep sometimes helps, not because sheep are special, but because the task is boring. Any monotonous, mildly engaging mental activity can work. Counting backwards, visualizing a repetitive scene, focusing on breath. The goal is to occupy consciousness just enough to prevent worrying thoughts, while being dull enough to allow drowsiness. Boredom is an underrated sleep aid. As you relax, breathing naturally slows. This isn't just correlation but causation. Slow breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, signaling safety and rest. Deliberately slowing your breath can accelerate this process. Techniques like 4-7-8 breathing, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 7, exhaling for 8, leverage this connection. Consciousness and breath are linked. Calming one helps calm the other. Some nights, thoughts won't stop. You lie awake, mind cycling through worries, plans, and replays. This hyperarousal keeps the brain in a state incompatible with sleep. Cortisol levels may be elevated, the sympathetic nervous system overactive. Strategies like writing worries down, scheduling worry time earlier in the day, or using relaxation techniques can help. But sometimes the only option is to wait, trusting that sleep will eventually come when the active mind finally quiets itself. You sleep better in familiar places. The first night in a hotel or new home often brings poorer sleep, a phenomenon called the first night effect. Research shows that one hemisphere of the brain remains more alert than usual in unfamiliar environments, maintaining vigilance. This partial wakefulness reduces sleep quality. Consciousness takes time to decide a new place is safe. You'll never know the exact moment you fall asleep. Consciousness cannot witness its own disappearance. You can remember getting drowsy, remember your thoughts becoming strange, But the final transition into sleep is invisible. It happens in a gap between experiences, a moment that is, by definition, not experienced. This is one of the most curious facts about consciousness. It ends every night without ever seeing its own ending. Sometimes you wake convinced you didn't sleep, yet hours have passed. This sleep state misperception occurs because not all sleep leaves memory traces. Light sleep, especially, can be difficult to distinguish from quiet wakefulness. The brain may have been sleeping, but consciousness has no record of it. People who believe they slept poorly often underestimate their actual sleep time when measured objectively. Memory and reality can diverge. Dreams can feel more real than waking life. Without the prefrontal cortex's usual skepticism, the dreaming mind accepts impossible events without question. You fly. You meet the deceased. You attend school unprepared, all feeling perfectly normal in the moment. Only upon waking does the strangeness become apparent. Dream consciousness is consciousness with the reality-checking function dimmed, believing whatever it creates. You can sleep through the garbage truck that comes every Tuesday, but wake instantly to an unfamiliar sound. The sleeping brain continues to monitor the environment, filtering familiar sounds and alerting to novel ones. This selective attention allows rest while maintaining awareness. What matters is not loudness, but meaning. Your name whispered may wake you when thunder does not. Consciousness never fully stops protecting you. An unexpected sound in the night snaps you awake. Your heart races, senses sharpen, though you may not know what you heard. This startle response exists because our ancestors who woke easily to unfamiliar sounds survived better than those who didn't. The brain is biased toward caution. It's safer to wake unnecessarily than to sleep through something that needs attention. Consciousness returns quickly when safety might be at stake. Some nights you dream vividly. Other nights, nothing. REM sleep, when most dreaming occurs, follows a 90-minute cycle that lengthens toward morning. If you wake after a long REM period, you're likely to remember dreams. Stress, alcohol, and certain medications can suppress REM sleep, reducing dream recall. The absence of remembered dreams doesn't mean you didn't dream, only that consciousness didn't catch the memory upon waking. Dreams cluster in the early morning hours. The first sleep cycles contain mostly deep, slow-wave sleep, with brief REM periods lasting only a few minutes. As the night progresses, REM periods lengthen, sometimes lasting up to an hour, and dreams become longer and more vivid. This is why you're more likely to remember dreams from just before waking. Consciousness re-emerges into a brain that has been actively dreaming, catching the final scenes of the night's productions. In lucid dreams, you realize you're dreaming while still asleep. This unusual state combines elements of sleeping and waking consciousness. The prefrontal cortex, usually quiet during dreams, shows increased activity, bringing self-awareness into the dream. Lucid dreamers can sometimes control dream events, flying at will or changing the scenery. This skill can be cultivated with practice, offering a unique playground where consciousness explores its own creations. Nightmares may serve a purpose. One theory suggests dreams simulate challenging scenarios, allowing the brain to practice responses without real consequence. Nightmares might be this rehearsal function intensified, processing fears and anxieties in the safety of sleep. People who experience trauma often have nightmares as the brain repeatedly tries to process the overwhelming event. These unpleasant dreams, though distressing, may be attempts at healing. Deep sleep is hard to wake from. In the deepest stages of non-REM sleep, consciousness has withdrawn almost entirely. The brain produces slow delta waves, neurons firing in synchronized rhythms quite different from waking. People woken from deep sleep feel groggy and confused, needing several minutes to fully recover awareness. This stage is vital for physical restoration, and the brain resists interruption. After a good night's sleep, you feel refreshed in ways hard to articulate. Memory has consolidated. Emotions have been processed. Toxins have been cleared from brain tissue. You feel like yourself again. This restoration is not passive. Sleep is an active process of maintenance and repair. Consciousness emerges renewed from a night of invisible work, ready for another day. Sometimes you dream of people who have died. These visitation dreams can feel especially vivid and emotionally powerful. The dreaming brain has access to all stored memories, including memories of the deceased. Whether these dreams represent something beyond ordinary experience or simply the mind processing grief is a matter of interpretation. What's certain is that consciousness can meet anyone in dreams, the living and the departed alike. Every night, consciousness changes form. The awareness that experienced your entire day transforms into something else as you fall asleep. It doesn't travel somewhere. It simply shifts. And yet, this is completely normal. You've done it thousands of times. The transformation of consciousness in sleep is perhaps the most familiar mystery that happens to us. When you wake tomorrow, you'll still be you, despite consciousness changing completely for hours. Something persists. Memory bridges the gap, connecting yesterday's self to today's. The narrative of your life continues, even though the narrator was absent. This continuity of identity across the discontinuity of sleep is so familiar, we rarely notice how remarkable it is. Sleep remains mysterious, even to science. We know it's essential. Prolonged sleep deprivation has serious consequences. We know what happens during sleep: memory consolidation, tissue repair, immune function. But why consciousness must change for these processes to occur is not fully understood. Sleep is a daily encounter with a mystery at the heart of being alive. You can trust sleep. Your brain has done this countless times across evolution, through all the creatures who have ever lived. The falling into stillness, the change of awareness, the return of consciousness in the morning. This cycle is older than you, older than human beings, older than the species that preceded us. You are held by something ancient and reliable. And now, there's nothing left to think about. The day is complete. The mind has done its work. All that remains is this moment, this breath, this gentle letting go. Consciousness will take care of itself. It will transform when ready and return when needed. You don't have to do anything at all. Just breathe. Just rest. Just drift into sleep. And so, our quiet journey through your everyday mind comes to a gentle close. We've traveled from the confusion of waking through the autopilot of morning routines into the filtered world of perception, the wandering country of daydreams, the connected space between people, the dimming hours of evening, and finally here, to the edge of sleep. From the alarm that enters your dreams, to the gorilla you don't see, to the songs stuck in your head, to this very moment of letting go, every ordinary moment. It turns out, is quietly extraordinary. What is consciousness in daily life? Perhaps it's simply this: awareness moving through the hours, filtering and focusing, wandering and connecting, rising with the sun and falling with the night. It doesn't need to be understood to be lived, and it doesn't need your help to fade into rest. Consciousness has been doing this since before you were born. It knows the way. In these final moments, notice how your day has been held by awareness. Every cup of coffee, every conversation, every thought, all witnessed by something within you that has always been here. And now that witness can rest. Think about all the people sleeping right now. All around the world, billions of consciousnesses transforming into dreams, into stillness, into peace. You're joining them. A vast community of sleepers. Let your boundaries soften. Let the edges of you become gentle. Consciousness doesn't end tonight. It just changes form. Let it change. Let it rest. Let it go. This gentle journey through your everyday mind was created for restless souls seeking peace. A quiet like and subscribe helps other tired minds find their way here too. It only takes a moment, but it means the world to us. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. There's nothing left to figure out tonight. No more facts to remember. No more questions to answer. Your brain knows how to sleep. It has done this thousands of times before. Allow these thoughts about consciousness to fade now, like the last light fading from an evening sky, leaving only warm darkness behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, settling into the bed like a stone, sinking gently into calm water. If sleep comes, let it carry you. You don't need to help. You don't need to try. Just allow. Tomorrow, you'll wake again. Consciousness reconstructing itself for another day of ordinary miracles. Another day of noticing, filtering, wandering, connecting. But tonight belongs to rest. Sleep well. Gentle awareness. You've done enough. You've been enough. You are enough. Let the mind that has been so busy all day finally be still. Good night.